Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Stroop. Today I'll be presenting on Saving Mr. Banks and how it connects with complexity science concepts like complex adaptive systems and complex responsive processes. Through scenes of collaboration and negotiation between Walt Disney and P.L. Travers, the film provides a fascinating case study in the adaptive process and the dynamics of a complex system. Saving Mr. Banks tells the story of Walt Disney's efforts to secure the rights of Mary Poppins from author P.L. Travers. The film highlights creative and cultural clashes between Disney, who wants to adapt the film into a family friendly musical, and Travers, who is deeply protective of her story and characters. These tensions lead to a constant negotiation and adaptation, showcasing how organizations and individuals navigate complex dynamics. The film explores themes of collaboration, personal values, compromise, making it a great lens through which to understand complexity science concepts like CAS and CRP. Here's the agenda for today's presentation. First, I'll provide a summary of the film. Then we'll explore CAS concepts such as how Disney's teams adapts to PL Travers feedback in real time. After that, we'll look at CRP concepts, focusing on key dialogue in the film. Lastly, we'll discuss facilitators and inhibitors of change and conclude with key takeaways for organizational dynamics. Here's the so what. Introduction and background using Saving Mr. Banks as a case study, Disney's attempts to secure the rights, film shows collaboration, adaptation, and conflict in creative and complex settings. The connection to complexity science is the highlights of adaptive processes, relational dynamics, negotiations. Relevant for today's organizational dynamics today, we're going to be using the systems thinker. Saving Mr. Banks follows Walt Disney's determined efforts to secure the film rights to Mary Poppins from its author P.L. Travers. The film delves into complex relationships between Disney and Travers, highlighting how their conflicting visions and personal values create tension. Travers is deeply protective of her story and resists Disney's creative suggestions, feeling they will dilute the essence of her work. For instance, Travers strongly opposes the inclusion of animation and musical numbers, which are integral to Disney's vision. This resistance leads to continuous negotiation and adaptation by Disney's team. These dynamics reflect the principles of complexity science and systems thinking, where organizations are seen as interconnected systems influenced by relationships and feedback loops. According to the systems thinker, organizations function as complex adaptive systems, where the interactions of individual agents lead to unpredictable outcomes. In the film, Disney Studios exemplifies this as the team's collaborative efforts and conflicts with Travers result in emergent creative solutions that weren't initially planned. The ongoing adaptations and negotiations in Saving Mr. Banks illustrates how complexity science concepts like the emergence, self-organization, and interdependence play out in real-world settings. The creative process depicted is not linear, but dynamic and responsive, shaped by the interplay of different perspectives and the need to adapt to unforeseen challenges. This aligns with systems thinking, emphasizing the understanding that the whole system requires looking at the relationships and patterns of interaction among its parts. By viewing the film through the lens of complexity science and the systems thinker, we can appreciate how the characters navigate a complex web of relationships, leading to innovative outcomes. It shows that successful collaboration and organization often depends on the ability to adapt to complex and embrace the emergent nature of creative processes. Applications of CAS concepts. In Saving Mr. Banks, we see Disney Studios functioning as a complex adaptive system, where individual agents, Disney, Travers, and the creative team interact dynamically to produce emergent outcomes. The system adapts continuously as Disney's team responds to Travers' strict demands, showcasing self-organization. For example, the Sherman Brothers rewrite the lyrics for the song Let's Go Fly a Kite to better align with Travers' version of Mr. Banks' redemption. This reworking wasn't part of the original plan, but emerged through their interactions and Travers' feedback. Self-organization in CAS occurs when agents within a system adapt and recognize their actions without external control. In the film, Disney's team frequently reorganizes their creative processes in response to Travers' critique, reflecting how new solutions and structures emerge organically in complex systems. According to the systems thinker, self organization enables systems to adapt to challenging conditions and generate innovative outcomes. The concept of rules and coherence is also central to CAS. In the film, Disney's overarching rule is to create a commercially viable, family-friendly movie, while Travers' rule is to maintain the integrity of her story. These competing rules create tension, but also drive the adaptation process. Over time, coherence emerges as the team finds a balance between Disney's goals and Travers' expectations. For instance, the compromise to retain Travers' key themes while incorporating Disney's visual musical elements create a final product that satisfies both sides. This illustrates how CAS achieves coherence not through rigid control, but through the interplay of agents, actions, and constraints. The film shows how systems thrive by allowing flexibility and fostering an environment where different perspectives contribute to the evolution of a shared goal. Applications of CRP concepts. Complex responsive processes, or CRP, focuses on how strategy and adaptation emerge through real-time interactions and relational dynamics. In Saving Mr. Banks, we see this in the evolving dialogue between Disney and Travers, where every interaction reshapes their working relationships and creative decisions. A pivotal moment of CRP occurs when Disney shares a deeply personal story about his own childhood and his father's harshness. This vulnerable moment reframes their dynamic, helping Travers realize that Disney understands the emotional weight of her story. It builds trust and empathy, enabling her to open up slightly to his vision. This aligns with CRP principles, as meaningful change often comes through relational connections rather than formal strategies. Another key scene that demonstrates CRP is when Trevor yells, "Why did you have to make him so cruel?" while watching the depiction of Mr. Banks. This outburst reveals her deep emotional connection to the character who represents her own father. Disney's team responds not by dismissing her feelings, but by incorporating her feedback to soften the portrayal, illustrating how real-time interactions can drive creative adaptation. Informal knowledge sharing is another significant element of CRP in the film. Travers often struggles to navigate the Hollywood environment and Disney's personality. For example, Disney's assistant and others on his team share tips on how to approach him, such as advising Travers to compliment Disney on his achievements or approach him in a less confrontational manner. These informal exchanges help Trevor better engage with Disney and that reflect how informal networks and organizations can play critical roles in navigating complexity. Together, these moments showcase how CRP operates through ongoing, responsive interactions, informal knowledge sharing, and relational adaptation, all of which are critical for navigating complex organizational challenges like the one in Saving Mr. Banks. In Saving Mr. Banks, Travers initially feels excluded from Disney's creative process, and her anxiety about losing control over her story is evident in multiple scenes. For example, during her first day at Disney Studios, she walks into the storyboard session only to find the creative team acting out parts of her story. This makes her feel as though they do not take her work seriously, increasing her sense of alienation and mistrust. Over time, Disney's team works to incorporate her in key decisions to ease her anxiety. For example, they invite her to participate in script discussions and even allow her to veto creative elements, such as the use of animated penguins. The scene where the Sherman brothers rewrite the lyrics to Let's Go Fly a Kite to reflect her vision of Mr. Banks as a redeemable figure shows how they actively add up to her feedback. This inclusion gradually helps Travers feel more respected and builds trust between her and the team. Disney's reflection on Travers' personal connection to her story marks a significant turning point. After Travers reveals the character of Mr. Banks is based on her father, Disney reflects on his own childhood and the pressures his father placed on him. He shares this with Travers in an emotional conversation, helping her see that he understands the story's emotional depth. This reflective practice enables the creative team to adjust their portrayal of Mr. Banks, making him less cruel and more nuanced. This adjustment honors Travers' vision while still aligning with Disney's goal of creating a relatable, family-friendly story. The reflective practice ensures the team doesn't simply push their agenda, but rather adapts to Travers' deeply personal stakes in the project. The outcome of this, by addressing Travers' sense of exclusion and anxiety involving her in the decision-making, Disney's team creates an environment of collaboration. This culminates in scenes like the reemergence of Mr. Banks' character and Travel's approval of a certain musical number, showing that creative control can be shared. Ultimately, the final product is a blend of Travers' authenticity and Disney's innovation, highlighting how CRP principles of inclusion and reflection lead to successful outcomes in complex projects. Facilitators and inhibitors of change. Facilitators of change in Saving Mr. Banks includes Disney's team's adaptability, but another overlooked facilitator is the role of Travers' driver, Ralph. Ralph builds a personal connection with Travers through the daily drives, subtly softening her rigid demeanor. For example, in one scene, he shares stories about his daughters and his own struggles, creating a sense of warmth and humanity that contrasts her often combative interactions with Disney's team. This personal connection acts as an emotional bridge, allowing Travers to feel more at ease and eventually more open to compromise. His lighthearted yet sincere personality provides her with small amounts of joy and reflection during an otherwise stressful experience. The bond they develop helps ease her anxiety and creates an indirect path for her to engage with the product more positively. Inhibitors of change. Inhibitors of change still play a significant role in the film. Travers' resistance to the collaborative Hollywood environment continues to create challenges, as she repeatedly demands unrealistic levels of control. For example, she insists on removing even small creative elements like the choice of music or the inclusion of animation, which frustrates the team and halts progress. Another great example of this is when she decides she does not want the color red in the movie at all. Another inhibitor is her general mistrust of Disney, which she perceives as someone who prioritizes profit over artistry. This mistrust is evident in her dismissive and condescending tone with interacting with him during meetings. Her inability to reconcile her preconceived notions about Disney delays the relationship building necessary for progress. Interestingly, Ralph's role also inadvertently highlights Travers' isolation. While he helps make her feel more comfortable, his kindness also contrasts sharply with the tension she experiences elsewhere, making her feel even more out of place in Disney's world. The interplay between facilitators and inhibitors of change is at the heart of Saving Mr. Banks. Ralph's warmth and personal connection with Travers serves as a quiet but powerful facilitator, helping humanize her experience and reduce her deafness. At the same time, and reduce her defenses. At the same time, Travers' mistrust and rigidity create ongoing inhibitors that must be addressed through persistence and adaptation from Disney and his team. This dynamic shows how both individual relationships and organizational strategies are critical in navigating complex systems. In conclusion, Saving Mr. Banks provides rich insights into the dynamics of complex adaptive systems and complex responsive processes, highlighting how organizations navigate challenge through adaptation, collaboration, and relational processes. The film demonstrates that effective strategies emerge not from rigid plans, but from continuous interactions, feedback, and adjustments. Insights from CIS. CIS shows us that organizations like Disney Studios in the film are not static entities, but dynamic ecosystems where individuals like Disney, Travers, and the creative team act as agents who adapt and recognize in response to constraints. Emergent outcomes, such as the final portrayal of Mr. Banks, occurs when the self-organization and creative solutions are allowed to thrive. This reflects the unpredictable but innovative potential of adaptive systems. Insights from CRP. CRP emphasizes the importance of real-time interactions and shaping strategy and outcomes. Disney and Travers' evolving relationship demonstrates how trust and empathy built through dialogue can resolve conflicts and lead to a shared understanding. Informal networks and conversations, such as the creative team sharing insights about Travers about navigating Disney, further highlight the role of relational dynamics in fostering change. Insights from complexity science. Complexity science teaches us that organizations must embrace uncertainty and change as inherent parts of their functioning. This film underscores the need for flexibility and responsiveness when dealing with diverse perspectives. As seen in the team's ability to adapt to Travers' demands, system thinking also reminds us to view organizations holistically, understanding how interconnected parts contribute to the whole. Insight to critical management studies. From a critical management studies perspective, Saving Mr. Banks challenges traditional notions of hierarchical control by showing how power dynamics and cultural differences influence collaboration. Travers' resistance to Disney's authority highlights the complexity of managing creative and emotional labor, while Disney's adaptive leadership shows the value of relational and inclusive approaches. Ultimately, Saving Mr. Banks reinforces that successful outcomes and complexity depends on balancing individual needs, organizational goals, and creative tensions. It provides a compelling example of how CAS, CRP, and complexity science concepts can be applied to real-world organizational dynamics. Thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to take any questions.